guys, and welcome back to another episode of Earthen's Den. And in today's episode, I want to talk to you guys about something that just really, it's honestly been a lesson for me this season. And, I want to start off by saying God is good. Okay, I want to start off by saying God is good because I think that there's just something so beautiful, how God can really take and make a message out of your situation, and how, when you really believe and you really have faith, God comes through and delivers. Sometimes things don't work out because it's just not supposed to. And then there are other times in our lives where, situations may feel a little shaky, maybe a little shaky. And it's like, you want to believe, but you don't believe. But there are those moments when you really believe that, God's going to come through for you, and he really does. And that's always been the guiding light for me. That's always been the one thing that has helped keep me afloat. Another thing I want to say too is, understanding that when it comes to walking with God, your faith walk, and just being a person of faith in general, definitely never normalizing suffering. But I think that this generation has created this false sense that you're never going to go through anything. You're never going to have any burdens. And I think that what we've done is weaken our society just greatly, because the truth is that, we live in a world where there are people who don't have mothers and fathers. We live in a world where people are abused. We live in a world where, my grandmother would say it all the time, but to be a child is the worst thing you could be in the world, right? We live in a world where the innocence is stripped away, oftentimes exploited and taken advantage of, and so it's just one of those things where it's like we just live in that type of world. We live in the world amongst other people who, have their own motives, and people who have their own, agendas and selfish ambitions and their own lust and their own desires, and so it creates this kind of like complexity, you know what I mean? And it's just not, you just can't control everything. Right. We understand we wrestle against spirits and principalities, not necessarily against flesh. And so I just wanted to come on and say that God is definitely good. It's kind of how I wanted to start this podcast episode. And, for myself, one of the things I've learned is that nothing in life is going to come easy. And I think, again, because we've created this narrative where, what people are striving for now is this, I think a part of it is definitely greed, right? I see luxury this and luxury that and brunch and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? I see all of that. But I think now what people are striving for is this false sense of every day is going to be happy. Every relationship it's going to be perfect. You can live in life where you're not going to go through anything. You can live a life where, it's going to be rainbows and butterflies and glitz and glam every day. And I think that's what we've created. And so I think when we talk about metaverse and everything, I think what we've done is really try to take people out of the woes and ebbs and flow of life, because I think we've created a generation that is not equipped to handle that mentally. I think we've weakened the mental strength and capacity of many by creating a false narrative that life is going to just be this perfect thing all the time. And I think that for a lot of people, they don't know how to, endure. You know what I mean? They don't know how to go through, to get through, and, let it make something great out of you. I think, again, one of the beautiful things I love about God, and he talks about this, how, God disciplines those who he loves, and I think about this, the chastising that I go through in my life, and for me, it's so easy to fight it. I think for so many people, they're so quick to jump ship. I told you guys in the last episode about having faith and being strong, but so many people are so quick to jump ship. Things start to suffer. It's not suffering necessarily, but you start to go through things in your life, and you find yourself running back to old ways. God deliver you from alcoholism. You find yourself picking back up the bottle as soon as something goes wrong in your life. And you got to understand, it makes it hard. How can God bless you if he can't correct you? How can you get to that next level if you can't be corrected? And one of the things I'm learning in my life is that sometimes life just gets a lot worse before it gets better. But I'm telling you right now, been through enough. I've seen a lot. I know it's not over. And, I'm always praying for better days. I'm always praying for goodness, but for me, I focus on the good in every day. I focus on the good in my life in every season, because I understand that, in this world, we're going to have trials and tribulations. I understand that, weeping may last for a night, but joy comes in the morning, and some days you just got to go to sleep. Some days you just got to go to sleep. Some days you just got to say, hey, I'm about to go to bed early. I'm about to just take a nap. Like, some days you just got to go to sleep. But at the end of the day, it doesn't last forever, and I think even with the goodness in your life, like, it's just more so being present for those things and looking for those things in your life, but you got to be strong. You got to be strong to get to the next level. You got to be strong to have a strong sense of character, and be the kind of person who could possess the blessings and the things that you want to possess. And, I'm always here to correct anyone who thinks that God doesn't want to bless people with material success. What you have to understand is that God knows us. He knows our hearts. He knows our thoughts. He knows our ways. He knows what we're going to do and say before we even do it. And so, to have that level of power, you got to know that He's not going to give you anything you can't handle. For a lot of us, we may make an idol out of it, right? You see some people who start off in a faith journey and then they turn on to be, something different. You have someone going back and forth. Kanye West is a prime example of this, right? And it's not to say you can't grow spiritually. It's not to say you can't learn about certain things, learn about other practices that, you may feel like God has led you to. But what people don't understand is that, a lot of times we get in these positions and it changes our hearts. It changes our hearts toward God. It changes our hearts towards people. And He's just not going to give you anything you can't handle. So it's not that God doesn't want to bless you. It's just that He wants you to be unfazed. I think an amazing example of this here, if you're looking for the love and the light and a true testimony, is Tabitha Brown. Not only to me is it inspirational that she's an older woman, but her family is beautiful. They're healthy. They're vegans. And, she talks about how for her in her journey, 20 years, I think that was another reason too why I would listen to pastors like T.D. Jakes, seeing where his ministry started and where it has grown to. For me, I've always kind of been in that space of like, I'm here for just wisdom from those who have done it and who have lived a little bit longer. You know what I mean? And I realized anyways, my reference point, I don't want to go too far off on that. My reference point was how Tabitha Brown was just saying how, she's blessed now, and they were asking her some questions, and she said, hey, it's been a journey, and she didn't say this verbatim, but she was essentially just saying, I'm right with God. I'm not really moved by the success. I'm grateful for my success, but it is not going to my head. I'm not all big headed, because she's had such a long walk to the success. And I think with this generation, we're kind of like the ones in Egypt, you know what I mean? Like fainting, fainting very quickly. But that's not what I wanted to talk about in this episode. What I wanted to talk to you guys about is, I'm not really sure what this agenda is. I think when it comes to homosexuality, one of the things that the pain points for me is just how so many black men, how many young boys were molested, and how nobody talks about that, and how that creates a warping mentality. And I start to think about it as a young girl, and you have some young girls who, you have parents, right? Parents who may be homosexuals. And, in these experiences, I don't think people realize the effect that this causes. So it's like, okay, you may have two moms, right? But I don't think people are really thinking about the whole perspective in that, because you're not going to sit and tell your kid, right? If you are homosexual, you're not going to say, oh, this is wrong, right? Because society has accepted it. And so what you don't realize is that you're creating this experience or this narrative to this child that, hey, it's okay for you to like other girls. And you have to realize that there are kids who grow up with parents who are heterosexual. And so what happens is you put these kids in position to where they have this different experience. And I don't think people are talking about that enough. I think that opens the door for perversion. I think that opens the door for this exposure that is just not okay. You know what I mean? And I don't think people talk about that. I seen a BetterHelp commercial, and from my experience with BetterHelp, I don't really think that it's just not a good app. Honestly, the people on the app, they're just not certified. A lot of them are just licensed social workers. They're not actually clinical psychologists. It's rare when you find some clinical psychologists on there. Most of the people on BetterHelp just have certificates too. If you look at their licensing credential, they don't really have the skill set or the medical terminology or just overall the vast experience to really be in your corner. I think, yes, they can be a good space. It's convenient as far as just having I feel like it's convenient as far as just having someone to talk to. I think as far as therapy is very expensive. It's not affordable. I know back in the day it was a stereotypical practice and narrative that was centered around therapy. But the truth is that therapy is really a luxury. Good therapy is a luxury. And so anyway, I like that counseling is affordable. And I think that they actually refer to themselves as counselors and not necessarily like psychologists or whatever. But yeah, so that's my take on BetterHelp and my personal experiences with it. I tried quite a few therapists. I was having them sessions back to back with different therapists, and a lot of them were tired, overworked, and they just really didn't have the space. I think it worked for me again because I needed to get some things off my chest, but I also was not coming to them from a space of like lack of self-awareness. I was very aware about the things I wanted to profess, the things I wanted to get off my chest, the things I wanted to heal. And so, the short amount of time that I was with BetterHelp, it did benefit me because, again, it was nice to just have a paid stranger listen to my truths, and God tells us to confess our sins to one another, honey. And it just really allowed me to get a lot of things off my chest. But I think if you are someone who, you really need a therapist, I don't really recommend it. Again, I think it's just one of those things where I just feel like they're just not qualified. I'm just going to be honest. But if you do have the financial means to do it, I would definitely say check out Psychology Today. They have a lot of licensed therapists, you know what I mean? Like legitimately. So that's really cool. So anyway, there was this BetterHelp ad, and the young woman said, why doesn't anybody like me? And then she goes on to say, oh, I think I'm gay. And, I think right now what people don't realize is that being gay has become this sense of convenience. And I just can't really seem to wrap my head around why or what this agenda is that they're pushing. I'm not really sure what it is. I don't even really care to go too far left and to veer into that because, again, hear me clearly, I understand the origins of homosexuality, and a lot of times it's bred from molestation. Homosexuality is not something that you're born with. It's a choice. So a lot of times that choice is oftentimes derived from feelings of inadequacy. There are young boys who don't necessarily look like, like other, they don't necessarily look like other little kids. These are young boys who may not be as strong. They may not be, you know what I mean? And so sometimes they just don't feel adequate in a sense. There may be young girls. I think I gave this example before on this podcast where I was just talking about how, if you're a young girl, I grew up a tomboy, and a lot of times people will try to, the thing about this, let me just say this. I grew up a tomboy. And in my era, it wasn't like a thing because we were all just kind of, I'm gonna be honest, we were all kind of ugly. Well, not everybody. There were some people who were they just had it at birth. But me, I grew up a little ugly. And, I don't want to say ugly. I'm saying that like jokingly, but I'm talking about myself. But I didn't grow into like my face. I didn't grow into my clothes. I was wearing 14, 16s when I should have been in a zero, but that was before the era of Aeropostale, or I just, we just didn't have the money for that. So I was, I wasn't in that space in my life. And, when it came to, that whole experience, that was just my experience I lived through. But now today, it's like, okay, if you like basketball or if you are someone who wear cargo shorts, people have this assumption that you're gay. And I think for society, because it has created this like, oh, it's just such a welcoming community and it's all, you know what I mean? Like it's just sad to see, because I think a lot of people are just looking for love and they're looking for a sense of belonging. And I understand if that's your truth. Like I personally think, I'm not here to bash it. I just think overall, I just kind of want to bring awareness to the fact that right now it's just a very convenient thing to do. It's like to be gay. Like, I couldn't believe that that ad was saying, oh, people don't like me and I think I'm gay. Like, what? Like, how? Where's the correlation? And I think you have a lot of people who spiral and feel like this is what they are. We don't know who you are. You have the world telling you this is who you are. And I think this is also why it's important to be rooted in Christ. It's important to have your own identity in him so he can tell you who you are. You know what I mean? So you're not going to be moved and shaken and, you know what I mean? All these different things and conveyed and swayed and persuaded into being something that you're just not, But yeah, that's pretty much the root cause of it. And honestly, I have a lot of compassion for the community because I understand the pain, I understand the frustration, I understand the lack of identity, and it's a very sad thing. It's a very sad thing what has happened to a lot of people in that community. It's a very sad thing, to grow up and be and so I understand. I completely understand. And again, it's definitely not coming from a place of judgment. It's just one of those things where I just realized like it's a thing to be. It's like it's a very convenient thing to be, and it's not always a person's truth. You know what I mean? I remember I actually had a gay uncle, and that was his truth. But he wasn't parading around and he didn't need all this validation. You know what I mean? Like, that was just who he was. And I think about it back then and people say, oh, being in the closet, being out of the closet. I don't really think it was a closet issue. I think it was just one of those things to where you are who you are. It's your truth. Like, for example, when something's your truth, you don't feel the need to constantly like seek all this validation, have all this approval. You don't need people championing for you. Like, it's just, okay, it is what it is. Like, this is who I am and what, you know what I mean? So I don't know, but I definitely, it's a very sad thing to see today because I think a lot of people are being persuaded into that. And it's like, hey, look, oh, you don't know who you are? We're going to tell you who you are. And this is who you are. And it's like, no, that's not the case for every single person, and this is why it's important to, find therapeutic practices if you can't necessarily afford therapy because, unprocessed pain, healing, hurt. This is also too prayer. Prayer is important. God's delivered me from so much, still delivering me from a whole lot of different things in my life. But it's just one of those things where it's like, it's just important to just be in a space where, you can let go of some things, you know what I mean? And release some things from your heart, because sometimes when we have pain in our lives, we make decisions based on that pain. And, sometimes those decisions can be life altering, sometimes those decisions can be just one of those things that just shape us, you know what I mean? But it's not really who we are. It's just a decision that we made in a season of our lives, and again, not here to judge, don't really have anything, hey, all I'm saying is I realize that today it's just kind of, it seems like it's something that's just more so convenient rather than authentic or, so anyway, I hope you guys have a great day and we'll talk soon.